Who better than me?
Greetings and salutations. Welcome back to another episode of the Hardcore Casual with your boy, Base the Kid. Now, I want to apologize. I was trying to get a video out a little earlier on this week, but it's been a bit of a long one. It's also been extremely tiring. A lot of stuff's been going on, sort of personally outside of the boxing world, but I had to get one out at least before the start of the weekend because there's quite a bit to talk about. Again, everyone please like and subscribe and all that good stuff. Now, before I really get into what I want to talk about in this video, which it wasn't initially my idea, I just want to sort of touch on the Sky card that's coming up tomorrow. If I'm honest, doing this video now was literally the first time I even thought about it this week, which is indicative to me of just how little interest the whole boxer project is garnering right now. Now, in the first week, we had the unfortunate Chris Eubank Jr. pull out because of both his opponents suffering different circumstances. One was COVID, the other one, the board wouldn't pass the medicals or whatever it was. So he's come back on this card with like a third opponent who nobody knows. And it's like, I get it. You want to try and introduce yourself to like this next wave of people, and you haven't really done much in the last couple of years, so you need to kind of get out and get active. But realistically, you had that warm-up fight earlier on this year, so this one, the names, the records might look like no losses or one draw or something like that, one loss, but these are still guys that we know that if you are of any decent level, you should be taking care of that quite easily. So I look at that and say, it's not good enough. I mean, look, let's just be real, it's not good enough. Now, yeah, I've heard that there's the rumours of the Liam Williams fight at the end of the year on box office, which definitely ain't getting my money. I don't care how stacked you try and make that card. And I don't even think you can make that card stacked because we've seen the roster that Boxer has thus far. There's very few talents outside of the women that they've been recruiting. There's not a lot there at all. But I definitely won't be paying for that if it's a pay-per-view. Not a chance. I'll definitely watch the highlights the following day. Even if I'm supposed to be working that day with various other bodies and calling fights or whatever, I won't be doing it because that's definitely not worth £20. But enough of Eubank, because that is what it is. Hopefully next year he can start getting busy and fulfill some of the promises that we've had for the last 2-3 years. Now, the two fights on the card that I'm somewhat interested in, I'll say. I was interested in Savannah Marshall just because I want to see how she's moving. Like she's actually fought twice in the last 12 months. She's actually had 2 fights already. This will actually be the third fight in about 13 months, which is pretty good by the current standards. The opponent, I don't know much about. I know she's 16-0 with 8 knockouts. African lady, so I guess I'll wish her well in that sense. But I know that she's basically a welterweight that's fought one fight at super welter, but even then she was only fighting at like 148.5 pounds, 149 pounds, so it wasn't even on the limit of super welterweight. and now she's going to be fighting in middleweight. So unless she's got some great defense, elusive movement, I can definitely see that not ending too well for her. But I hope it, for the most part, I hope it's at least a competitive fight as much as it can be, I suppose. You know, I am quite interested to see Hughie Fury against Christian Hammer, though. I know a lot of people are kind of shitted on this fight, and like it's not great in the grand scheme of things. But Christian Hammer isn't really a guy that gets dominated or gets stopped often. Like I know Tyson Fury stopped him, but not many others have. A lot of his losses have been points, and he doesn't even have a huge amount of losses, to be fair. So it's not, he's not like a shot fighter, but he's just very much of a spoiler. So unless Huey has now developed some kind of different hybrid style that's a bit more aesthetically pleasing to the eye, yeah, the fight could be very much of a sort of a hit and grab, hit grab turn the person, hit grab turn the person, keep them off balance, keep them off center, not allowing someone to plant their feet, and that I guess could be how the fight itself plays out. But if Huey can do something, if he can actually stop Hammer, or at least put like a very big beating on him, it would signify some pretty good work on his part. And he's still only 26, 27, so he's still got many years kind of left in the tank if he stays, if he has improved past what he was a couple of years back, then we can kind of see, okay, cool, I can see a trajectory. Because one of the big things that was always said about Huey was he would fight, for lack of a better word, bomb after bomb after bomb, and then go in with an elite guy, and then they get beat, and then just go back to fighting bomb after bomb after bomb, and then jump straight back into another elite guy. So there was never any middle ground. There was never any step up for you to truly see what level he was at. Christian Hammer is that perfect fight because he's definitely like I say a top 25 type guy, possibly even top 20. His record's pretty good. He's been in there with a lot of credible people. So you beat him, then you go up the ladder to say like the top 20 or the top 15. Someone within that, or even just sort of maybe even between like 18 to 14, so somewhere in there, and then go up again and go up again. So that way we can track, okay, what level you're really at, who you're struggling with, who you're not. But I am interested in that fight. My Saturday is actually supposed to be quite busy, so I may not even get to watch the show live, which means my after show thoughts could end up being very very late as well. Um, my Saturday's busy, my Sunday's busy, my Monday's busy. It's like there's not a lot of time for the next couple of weeks, but I'm going to try and get as much out as I can, and hopefully we will, you know, uh, we will have some stuff to talk about. Okay, so my main reason for this video, I'm gonna call it the fallout of Fury. Yeah, I think that might end up being the title. I'll think about it. That sounds pretty good. Yeah, maybe. Anyway, so I see a lot of praise on the fight from the weekend just gone. And don't get me wrong, it was a very good fight. It was a great fight at points as well. But I just feel as if the fight has been overhyped and overrated already. Maybe it's because of high emotions and maybe some people not understanding history or seeing, how things used to be, short attention spans. Maybe. I don't know. But I just feel like it's being overinflated. And again, like the fallout is that based off of Tyson Fury beating Deontay Wilder for a second time, back to back, and having the draw, making this like one of the greatest trilogies in heavyweight history, and making Tyson Fury undisputed number one heavyweight in the world and amongst the greats from the past. And I'm just like, hold on a minute. Number one, this can't be a great trilogy if only one person has actually won any fights in it. Like the first fight was a draw, but everyone, apart from diehard Wilder fans, say that Tyson Fury won that fight and was robbed of the decision, right? The away fighter got robbed, according to them. All right, so you run it back. Tyson Fury wins conclusively. Like, no discussions, no arguments. But there's a contractual rematch. So you run it back again. 20 months later, so holding up the whole rest of the division, stagnating everything, no WBC shots for anyone else. You got Dillian White fighting, losing, fighting, winning, about to fight again for the third time when these men haven't fought since. Alright? But these men now get it on. And Tyson Fury still wins pretty convincingly, but struggles a lot more than he did in the second fight, and probably just a bit less than he did in the first because of the way the style was. So it was a much worse performance from him, which made Wilder look a little better than maybe he should have looked in this fight if you're just going on past performances. Now, I said on an episode of the Undefeated on one of the live streams when it was the Fowler versus Smith, or the Smith versus Fowler stream, where they asked me my opinion, and I said I've got a sneaky suspicion that Deontay Wilder wins this fight. And then I even said on Monday Night Smoke, I was happy that my prediction was wrong, because my prediction was only based on stuff that from outside of the ring. It had nothing to do with their skills, technical abilities, all that stuff. It was literally because I believe Tyson Fury was out and about on ends in Vegas, fucking about, living the life, buying fancy cars, buying suits that don't fit him correctly, Versace this, like just hanging out, not really focusing and concentrating. And then, as you saw, when the same thing happened with Lennox Lewis in Vegas, fucking about on movie sets, not taking training seriously, got his ass knocked out by Hasim Rahman. So there is precedent for that. Same thing with Mike Tyson in Japan, not training properly, fucking about, looking for women, all this kind of stuff. Gets his ass knocked out by Buster Douglas because he wasn't focused. Even though everyone said Buster Douglas is actually a style that's kind of all wrong for him, he never had the best preparation for that fight to begin with. So there's a pattern of fighters not doing what they need to do, taking their eye off the ball, and then allowing someone who's considered nowhere near as good as them to cause the upset because that person just wanted it more than them on the night, plus they weren't focused. So that was the reasons why I thought that Wilder could end up winning the fight. Plus, obviously, you got Fury come back, his daughter, the thing that happened with his daughter. He's, so I would think mentally your mind might not be totally on job. And we all know that he doesn't like to fight on top. He likes to be the underdog. He likes to feel like everyone's against him. So all these things happened. Cool, I got it wrong. Like I said, I'm happy I got it wrong because it means that boxing wins, ultimately. But we look at the fight, as I said last week, it was a very, very good fight for 5 rounds. Yeah, 5 rounds. After the 5th round, it was literally a lean-a-thon for the next 6. Tyson would hit, he would grab, he would lean, he would push back. Wilder would try and swing, he might catch him on gloves. He might take a few, but there was no snapping any of those shots after this point. But what would Fury do? Fury would grab. He would lean on him. He would put him in guillotine chokes. He would just push him back to the ropes. That's all he was doing from round 6 up till round 10 and round 11 when the next two knockdowns happened. So it was a good fight for 5 rounds. It was a very good fight for 5 rounds. It was just okay after that. Overall, yeah, it was an entertaining fight, but it wasn't a boxing masterclass. It wasn't an all-time classic. It wasn't even, to me, a modern-day classic. It was just a good fight. It was worth paying the pay-per-view for. I will say it was, I didn't feel slighted that I paid that. But when I'm just seeing some of the praise that's getting heaped on this fight, I'm like, yo, you lot need to calm down. Because if you actually watch, if you're just like a standard casual, not a hardcore casual like me, but a standard casual, and you don't really see a lot of fights, cool. All right, I'll give you that. Yeah, this one was great. But then don't make statements like, oh, it was one for the ages. Oh, it's the best fight I've ever seen. Or if you can say it's the best fight you ever seen. Yeah, but make the disclaimer you don't watch boxing like that, just so we know what your level is. Because ultimately, someone who watches boxing is gonna hear you say something like that, and the first thing they're gonna look at you is like, what are you talking about? Like, who are you? So I'm always of the opinion you can say anything you want as long as you preface it by saying I don't I'm not gonna say I know a lot or something along them lines. Like, I don't know a huge amount from the 50s, 60s, 70s. I wasn't born then. There's only certain man whose fights I've gone back and watched from those eras. And I could say, oh, that's the best fight I've seen from then. But I will always say, but I haven't seen everyone. That wasn't my time. Bring it to even sort of the 90s. Yeah, I watched quite a bit in the 90s, but in the 90s, I was still in primary school for like the first half of that. Second half, I'm in secondary school. Like, so even then, like, I'm not really computing certain things. Like, boxing wasn't my thing from a young youth. Like, my late teens to my early 20s was when I really started watching, and then like my mid to late 20s is when I became like, no, I'm fully entrenched in this kind of thing. So there will be a lot of stuff from back then that I won't remember or I won't know about. So I can say, oh, that's the best fight I've seen from there. But I will always tell someone, I ain't seen everything. If you can show me, better show me, because I want to see it. So that's that. Now let's get on to the ESPN rankings for the top 10. I'm not even going to spend much time on it, but what did they put Tyson Fury as? Number 4? Or something like that? Did they put him as number 4 in there? I'm like, okay, first of all, like, everyone knows what pound for pound is supposed to mean. So realistically, heavyweights don't really get put in a pound for pound list. But if you want to say, okay, this heavyweight at their size, if everyone was the same size as them, do their skills translate? Well, Tyson Fury, skill wise, movement wise, is not a better fighter than Terence Crawford. If we're looking at movement, skills, ring IQ, yes. Craftiness, yes. He's not a better fighter than Chocolatito or Inoue or Lomachenko. Skill-wise and movement, he's not a better fighter than Usyk. So realistically, how does he go to number 4 in the pound for pound list? His biggest advantage is the fact that he's bigger than everyone else. 6'9", or less than that if you believe the rumors that he wears lifts in his shoes or whatever. Maybe he's 6'7.5", 6'8", because that's rumors I've heard. But either way, he's bigger than everyone. He kind of weighs more than everyone, but he's an anomaly because even that big weight, he kind of still is able to move. But then again, even that is kind of an illusion because he moves the top half of his body. His legs don't really move that much. It's the fact that he's long, he's able to kind of get out of the way of shots a lot of the time without having to do too much movement. And this, like, actually, I don't want to make this, oh, you're bashing Tyson Fury. It's not that at all. I'm just trying to relay that when everyone is overhyping something, it turns you off and makes you almost want to go the complete opposite way. Now, I give him his credit because, like I said, I thought he was gonna get beat because of all the outside the ring stuff, but he dialed it in when he needed to dial it in, and got the job done. So if someone tells me he's number one in the division right now, oh, okay, I won't argue with you because there's not much I can argue against unless but then when we start talking about, oh, he's one of the best ever, or he should be in the conversation with all these other men, then I'm like, well, okay, let's check the maths. Like, who have you realistically fought? Because fighting one person 3 times does not get you a Hall of Fame resume if that's all you've done. Especially when that one person, yes, we know he's a puncher, supposedly. Like, because even that is up for debate with me. I can debate that with anyone personally. But, okay, the most dangerous puncher in the division, but nothing else. No fundamentals, no ring IQ, no, no great footwork, no great movement. There's nothing else there apart from this big punch. So you beat this person 3 times, and you beat Vlad Klitschko. And yeah, Klitschko win was a good win, but if everyone wants to talk about AJ's win over Klitschko, oh well, yeah, but AJ fought a 41-year-old version of Klitschko after he'd already been beat, coming off a loss in 18 months of inactivity. Well, Tyson Fury beat a 39-year-old version of Vladimir Klitschko. So it's not like he fought him as a spring chicken either. So when you start peeling back the layers of the illusion itself starts to fall, it starts to fall apart. So you've got those 2 bodies on your record, right? Well, what else is there? Like, for you to realistically be claiming ATG status, or, oh, well, I'm the best, I've got nothing else to do, like I've done it all. You haven't done it all. We still ain't seen you fight a mandatory yet. So until you fight a mandatory, that's still something you ain't ticked off. You haven't fought at least 50% of the current top 10 in the division. So until you fight at least 1 or 2 other men from the top 10 and beat them, like, your job's not done. Now, if you decide to quit and sail off into the sunset right now, I'll say, all right, you know what? Cool. Like, you did well. You did well for, I guess, what you wanted to do, innit? But I'm not going to give you no ATG flowers because you ain't done enough. And I think when other people, stop dick riding, stop being a bum tickler for ESPN and just trying to get interviews and trying to keep past credentials and all shit like that, you will see yourself like, all right, there's not a lot of work here. Yeah, you can say you beat 2 of the guys from your era, 1 from the previous era, 1 from your era, but technically, since Vlad was from a different era to you and Wilder, realistically, you've only beat 1 guy in your era right now. There's still more work to do. Even if you think Anthony Joshua's a waste man, well, guess what? But he's still got to be top 5. You keep saying he's easiest night's work, so you've got to deal with that work. Alexander Usyk, you definitely got to deal with that work because he's basically come and outshone everything you've done in the space of 1 fight. His main fight at heavyweight, he's come and taken 3 belts after cleaning up in cruiserweight with 5. All in under 20 fights. And you're in big 30 plus fights and only ever held one belt with a defense. Never defended any others. Like, so now you've got that work to do. You've got a mandatory in either Dillian White or Otto Wallin. You've got to deal with that work as well. You can't avoid the smoke right now if you actually want proper accolades. Otherwise, you're always going to be a, but what if? How do we know he was as good as we think he was? Who did he fight to prove that? And that's my thing. So, again, great work from the weekend just gone. Take some time out, do what you need to do, recover, recuperate. But I need to see more from you before you can get my seal of approval saying that you are the number one guy of this era. Because you might be number one right now, but the era's not done. So until you've done some more work in this era, I can't give you that. Personally, even with 2 defeats, I still gotta give more props to Anthony Joshua. And I'm not even a Joshua fan, so I don't want anyone to oh, he's a Joshua fan, that's what. No, I actually don't. I'm not a fan of Joshua. I'm actually not a fan of any of the guys, barring possibly Dillian White. And even that fandom there is, it's wavering in the sense of I'm not going to lie just because I like Dillian White. If I don't like what he's doing, I'm gonna tell you I don't like what he's doing. I was one of the first people that said, why is he fighting man them like Rivas and Povetkin when all the champions are big 6'5", 6'6" and above people? What sense did it make? I said the Povetkin was gonna beat him in that first fight, and I thought it was a possibility it could have happened in the second one. But when I heard about the COVID and stuff, I was like, oh well, maybe that one's a bit different now. And I see Povetkin walking down the ramp. I'm like, this brother looks like he can barely catch his breath. This is not going to end well. Wallin is actually a good test because he's a tall guy and he's southpaw, which means now you've got that different work that you need to figure out. Because Fury, if he wants to, does go southpaw sometimes. So now you're going to know how to deal with him, orthodox and southpaw. But moving away from that, getting back to my original point, I'm just saying there's a lot more for you to do. So I still believe Anthony Joshua is probably, to me, above you in the sense that he's taken on challenge after challenge. Like, he's cleared out everyone he's fought in the top division, in the top 10, barring one person who he's about to go and have a rematch with. If he gets that work off in the rematch, then I'd still put him back number one. 2 losses or not, because he's taking the fights. There ain't no Pianettas or Sefa Safiris in his last 12 outs. Since his 14th fight, or his 15th, I guess technically, with Dillian White, what's that? 10 fights since. Everyone has been a top 10, with the exception of maybe Eric Molina. So one person. And even that wasn't necessarily like a gimme fight. Well, okay, no, I'm not even going to cap. It was a gimme fight. But that's like been the only one. Takam was a top 10 opponent, and he wasn't even supposed to be the opponent. He was supposed to be Pulev. So there's just more consistent work on AJ's record. So until you get more consistency and taking more of these challenges that you're supposed to be taking, and not just picking and choosing, which right now you can't do because you got the belt, unless the franchise comes up. But again, people have heard my takes on what's going to happen next. And you know what? I said it on other channels, so I'm going to say it on this one. I had 2 takes that if Anthony Joshua had beaten Alexander Usyk, Deontay Wilder would have definitely won that rematch. Purely because it's been established that freezing out of Anthony Joshua from the division was happening. Ben Davison said it on an IFL interview the other day. Like, I heard it with my own ears. I made sure that I sent it to other people so that they heard, just so it wasn't just me. So we heard that. So we knew that was going to happen. Now, I've consistently maintained that neither Fury or Wilder wanted to fight Joshua purely because they didn't want to play second fiddle. They didn't want to be the B side. They saw the money he's making and said, no, no, we want some of that money, but we don't need to fight it. Like, let's try and garner it ourselves. So you freeze him out. Okay, so if he wins, then Wilder wins. All of a sudden, it's 1-1-1. You can't leave it like you can't leave the trilogy like that. There's no winner. There's no conclusion. So now you've got to have the fourth fight. You generate that fourth fight, but you manage to still keep that belt over in America on ESPN or Fox. Happy days to them. That was one of the takes I had. And right now you can't disprove it because things didn't pan out in that way. But that's the speculation. Alright, cool. My second take. This one I think is actually a lot more plausible. And it could end up being totally wrong. But it's very plausible that everyone seems to be capping in the US right now. Oh, Fury doesn't need to fight Dillian White. Like, he should just wait for Usyk or whatever. Bob Arum notoriously was the one that petitioned for franchise for Lomachenko, which is how Devin Haney ended up getting his lightweight WBC championship. So why won't Bob Arum petition for a franchise belt for Tyson Fury, seeing as everyone considers him to be the best in the division already? All right. Now, what was the one thing that Tyson Fury said on his before I pack it in, I'm gonna beat Wilder, then I'm gonna have Dillian White as a tune-up in December, Anthony Joshua back-to-back 2 fights, then a fight with Derek Chisora for the trilogy, and then I'm off. If he petitioned himself a franchise, which I think is going to happen, that Derek Chisora trilogy is going to end up being his next fight. A trilogy that no one wants, no one needs, no one requires, but I can see it happening. And if not Derek Chisora, you best believe he probably was watching the David Haye call out and said, "Oh, that makes some, that's gonna be a bit of a spectacle." So it will either be Derek Chisora next to complete that trilogy, or David Haye, and then Derek Chisora. Because it won't be Chisora then Haye. It will probably be the other way around. Those are the takes. They're here. They're on camera. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. Anyway, it's enough for me from now. I've got to get ready. Getting to go watch Venom in a little bit. So, got a shower, do all the normal stuff. But again, please like, subscribe. I'm probably gonna do a summary video at the end of the weekend, and then I might start introducing a hot takes video weekly if I can get it done. I just gave you a hot take there, but I got plenty more with a lot of evidence to back it up. This one's all about speculation, but just with circumstantial evidence, or things where it just makes sense. But there's other hot takes coming. But yeah, like and subscribe. And for right now, Hardcore Casual out.